The knock came at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, and it was the kind of knock that didn't ask permission. Serene Okafor heard it from under the chassis of a 2019 Ford F-150 she'd been chasing an exhaust rattle on for 3 days straight. She was lying on the creeper, knuckles scraped, hair tied back with a shop rag, and the garage smelled like penetrating oil and burnt coffee from the pot she'd left on since 6 that morning. The overhead fluorescents buzzed the way they always did when the temperature outside dropped. It was October in Sudbury, Ontario, and the cold had already come in hard. She didn't move right away. The knock came again. 3 slow, deliberate strikes on the metal roll-up door. Not panicked, not drunk, deliberate. Serene slid out from under the truck, stood up, and wiped her hands on her coveralls. She was 26 years old, 5'4", and she had a habit of standing very still when she was thinking. She stood still now. The garage belonged to a man named Dale Whitmore. Dale had owned it for 31 years and run it the same way for 31 years. No walk-ins after 6, no exceptions, invoice before keys, cash preferred. He'd taken Serene on 4 years ago when she showed up with a handwritten resume and correctly diagnosed a misfire on his personal truck in the parking lot before he'd even invited her inside. She'd been his best technician ever since, which was something Dale said out loud roughly once a year, always in a tone that made it sound like a complaint. The shop was hers alone after 8. Dale went home to his wife and his dinner, and his 9 o'clock news. Serene often stayed. She had a basement suite 3 blocks away, a space heater that worked sometimes, and a habit of finding reasons to not go home yet. She walked to the side door, not the roll-up, the regular door, and pressed her ear against it for a second. She could hear an engine idling outside, a motorcycle, a big one from the sound of it. The idle had a particular rhythm, uneven and slightly rough, the kind that came from a carb issue or a timing problem you'd been ignoring for too long. She cracked the door. The man standing on the other side of it was enormous. Not in the way that people sometimes say to mean heavy. He was built the way old growth trees are built, wide at the base, unbothered by weather. He was wearing a cut over a canvas jacket, the patches on it worn smooth at the edges from years of friction. The top rocker said Iron Road. The bottom said Northern Ontario. There was a center patch she recognized from the news, and she filed that away without making it obvious she'd noticed. He had a beard going gray at the jaw, a face that had taken some history, and his hands were at his sides, open. She noted that. "I'm not supposed to be open," she said. "I can see the lights," he said. "Those are my lights." He looked at her for a second. "My Road King is throwing a code and running rough. I've got 300 kilometers between here and where I need to be tomorrow morning. I'm not asking for a favor. I'll pay whatever you want." Serene looked past him at the bike parked near the pump island. A Harley Davidson Road King, burgundy and chrome, maybe a 2017 or 2018. Even at idle, she could hear it. A subtle stumble at low RPM, slight hesitation. She'd heard that particular combination before. She opened the door wider. "Pull it inside," she said. "I'll take a look." His name was Knox. He didn't offer a last name, and she didn't ask. He was quiet in the way that people are quiet when they're used to filling rooms just by standing in them, and they've learned to compensate. He sat on a stool near the parts cabinet while she worked, and he didn't hover, didn't second guess, didn't offer suggestions. He watched. She connected the diagnostic scanner first. 2 codes, P0171, System 2 lean on Bank 1, and a secondary flag on the O2 sensor. She cleared them, let the bike idle, watched the live data on the screen. "When's the last time you put fuel in?" she asked. "Outside of Timmins, maybe 4 hours ago." "Which station?" He named it. She nodded once. "And before that?" He thought about it. "Sault Ste. Marie." "Why?" She was already pulling the fuel cap. She had a flashlight in her chest pocket, and she shone it down into the tank. The smell hit before the light confirmed it. A faint sour note underneath the regular petrol smell, the kind that most people would miss entirely and that Serene had learned to catch 3 years ago when a similar situation had cost a customer a fuel pump and an injector on the same job. "Your fuel's got water in it," she said. "Not a lot. Enough. Someone at that station in Timmins has got a tank issue they probably don't know about yet." Knox was quiet for a moment. "Is it rideable? You'd make it maybe another 50 kilometers before it started surging. Might make 100 if you're lucky and the temperature doesn't drop further. It'll foul the injector eventually." She put the fuel cap back. "I can drain it, flush the system, put fresh fuel in from our pump. Check the injector while I'm at it. Probably 2 hours. It's almost midnight, I'm aware of that." He looked at her steadily. "What do you charge for something like that after hours?" "I don't normally do after hours, but you're doing it now." She thought about that for a second. "Double shop rate, plus parts and fuel." He reached into his cut and pulled out a wallet that was thick with the casual thickness of a man who kept cash, because he'd never trusted anything else. "What's the number?" she told him. He counted it out and set it on the workbench without being asked. She got to work. The drain took 30 minutes. The flush took another 20. She pulled the primary injector and cleaned it by hand, which was meticulous work, the kind that required focus and a certain patience. Knox didn't say much. Around 1 in the morning, he went out to the vending machine she kept stocked in the side room and came back with 2 coffees from the machine, set one near her elbow without announcing it. She didn't thank him out loud. She picked it up and drank it. You from Sudbury? He asked eventually. Originally from Kapuskasing, she said. You grew up outside of Hearst. He paused, long time ago. She nodded. That explained something about him, she thought. The North had a way of making people economical, with words, with sentiment, with any kind of display. You learned early that the weather didn't care about your feelings, and you stopped expecting the landscape to soften anything. What's in Sudbury for you? He asked. Works? Dale's been good to me. Garage is solid, I save enough, maybe I open something of my own eventually. What would you call it? She looked up at him briefly. Okafor's, he made a sound that might have been a laugh. Good name. By 2:15 the Road King was running clean. She started it in the garage and let it idle for 5 minutes while she watched the live data on the scanner. The lean code was gone. The O2 sensor was reading correctly. The idle was smooth and even, the way it was supposed to be. The rhythm of a properly calibrated engine, regular as a resting heartbeat. Knox walked around the bike once, listening. He crouched down beside the exhaust for a moment the way a man does when he's hearing something he knows well and checking to see if it still sounds like itself. He stood up. That's right, he said. That's exactly right. There was something in his voice that she hadn't heard there before. Something that was not quite relief but adjacent to it. The feeling a person gets when something important has been returned to them in the condition it was supposed to be in. He pulled the bike outside. She rolled the door back down against the cold. He paid her the remainder in cash for the fuel and parts, then added another 50 that she hadn't billed for and walked back to the bike before she could object. He stopped once before putting his helmet on. That station in Timmins, he said. You should report it. I will, she said. I was going to. He nodded. He put his helmet on and he rode north into the October dark. The Road King running clean and even until the sound of it faded completely. Serene locked up at 2:30, walked home and went to sleep. Dale Whitmore called her at 8:04 the next morning. She was already up. She'd been up since 6:30, which was how she always was. The kind of person who woke before the alarm and lay there for a few minutes cataloging the day ahead, then got up and started it. She was at her kitchen table with instant coffee and a notepad when his name appeared on her phone screen. She answered it on the second ring. I need you in the office. His voice was flat in a way that was different from his usual flatness. Before you start on anything. I'll be there in 20, she said. He hung up without responding. She knew what it was about before she walked through the door. She'd known it was a possibility the moment she'd made the decision to let Knox in. Dale had a camera on the outside of the building, a visible deterrent he'd installed after a break-in 8 years ago, and it pointed directly at the side entrance. She'd seen it every day for 4 years. She'd thought about it for a few seconds the night before and decided anyway. Dale's office was at the back of the garage, behind a partition wall with a window that looked out onto the shop floor. He was sitting behind his desk when she came in, and he had his arms crossed, which was a posture she associated with conversations she'd rather not have. The monitor on his desk had the security footage pulled up on it. She could see herself opening the side door at 11:52 p.m. She sat down across from him and didn't wait for him to start. I know what the policy is, she said. Someone came in after hours with an emergency. I made a judgment call. The policy exists for a reason, Dale said. I know. Liability. Insurance. If something had happened in the shop last night. I know, Dale. He was quiet for a moment. He was 58 years old, and he had the face of a man who had been running a business on thin margins for decades, and that face did not give away much. But she knew him well enough to read it. He was not angry. He was something more complicated than angry. He was the thing a person becomes when someone they've trusted has done something they can't defend and can't quite condemn either. I'm going to have to let you go, he said. She didn't move. Okay, you understand why. I understand your reasoning. She paused. I don't agree that it's the right call, but I understand it. He looked at her for a long moment. The guy on the bike, do you know who that was? He said his name was Knox. Iron Road MC. Dale's expression shifted in a way she hadn't anticipated. Something behind his eyes changed. Not fear exactly, but a recalibration of something. He looked at her steadily. His full name, Dale said carefully, is Knox Trevane. He's been with the Iron Road since he was 19 years old. He paused. His younger brother is Callum Trevane. The name meant nothing to her for a second, and then it did. Callum Trevane was the founder and CEO of Trevane Holdings. It was a company that had started as a fleet management operation out of North Bay in the 1990s and had grown into a logistics and property concern with offices in 4 provinces. In Sudbury specifically, Trevane Holdings owned 3 commercial properties on the main arterial roads. One of them was the strip of lots that included the block Dale's garage sat on. Dale leased from them, had for 11 years. She absorbed this information quietly. I didn't know that, I know you didn't. Dale uncrossed his arms and set his hands flat on the desk. That's actually the only reason this conversation is as short as it is. You weren't trying to leverage anything, you were just... He stopped. You were just being you, so you're still letting me go. I have to, Serene. She nodded once. She stood up, thanked him, and went to clean out her toolbox. She had two snap-on rollaway units she'd built over 4 years, and she worked methodically and without rush, wrapping each tool in its cloth, setting them in the red metal drawers of the portable chest she'd haul to wherever came next. The other two mechanics were already in by then. A man named Gilles who'd been with Dale for 12 years, and a young apprentice named Cody who'd started in the spring. They both watched her work, and neither of them said anything. Gilles handed her the handle of her torque wrench at one point, which she'd left on the bench. He didn't say a word. She took it from him and nodded. She was done by 9:15. She walked out into the October morning with a wheeled chest behind her, and a toolbox in her hand, and the cold coming in off Lake Ramsey 3 blocks away. And she stood there for a moment thinking about what came next. She called her sister in Kapuskasing. She called the bank. She pulled up her employment insurance information on her phone. She went home. For the first week, she applied to every independent garage within 40 kilometers. She had a strong resume and excellent references. Dale had written her one without her asking, which she discovered when the first two shops she applied to mentioned it. The letter apparently said that she was the most technically capable mechanic he'd ever employed, and that the reason for her departure was a policy disagreement and not a reflection of her work. She got 2 offers in the first 10 days. She turned down the first one, a dealership on the South End that would have paid her better, but meant working on a single manufacturer's line, which was not something she wanted to do. The second was from a small independent near the Flour Mill neighborhood, a 3-bay operation run by a man named Yannick Perriot who was 61 years old and had been making quiet noise for 2 years about wanting to sell to the right person. She took the job. She also began a conversation with Yannick about the future. On the 14th day, her phone rang at 9:30 in the morning. Unknown number. She almost let it go, then answered. "Is this Serene Okafor?" The voice was even, measured, the voice of someone accustomed to making phone calls that mattered. "It is," she said. "My name is Callum Trevane. I believe you met my brother 2 weeks ago." She sat down at her kitchen table. "I did. I'd like to meet with you," he said, "if you're willing." A brief pause on her end. "What about?" "Knox told me what you did," Callum said. "He told me the whole thing, the fuel contamination, the time, the way you handled it." A short silence. "I've also spoken to Dale Whitmore." "Okay, I want to offer you a conversation first. Then if you're interested, something more concrete." He paused. "I'm not calling to apologize on anyone's behalf. I'm calling because I think something happened that shouldn't have, and I'd rather address it directly than not." She thought about this for a moment. "I'm free Thursday," she said. "Thursday works," he said. The office of Trevane Holdings in Sudbury was on the 5th floor of a building on Elm Street that had been refaced in dark glass sometime in the 2000s and never quite looked like it belonged there. The receptionist brought her coffee without asking and showed her to a boardroom with a window facing downtown. Callum Trevane was not what she'd expected, and she'd tried not to expect anything specific, which was its own kind of expectation. He was in his mid-50s, lean, with the kind of stillness that ran in that family apparently. He stood when she came in and shook her hand with both hands, which was a gesture she associated with sincerity, and which could of course be performed without any, but in his case she decided quickly was not. He listened more than he talked for the first 20 minutes. He asked her about her background, her training, her years with Dale. He asked her what she'd thought she was doing when she let Knox in, and she told him honestly. She'd thought she was doing her job, and she'd thought about the camera and decided it was the right call anyway. "Dale Whitmore is a good man," Callum said. "He was in a difficult position." "I know," she said. "I don't have any problem with Dale. He told me that." Callum was quiet for a second. "He also told me that he's been trying to find a way to bring you back that doesn't undermine the policy he just enforced." She looked at him steadily. "The building your shop is in is owned by a numbered company that falls under my portfolio." Callum said, "I'm not going to pretend that's not relevant to this conversation because it is. But I want to be clear that what I'm about to offer isn't because of that. It's because of what Knox told me and what I've since confirmed from 3 separate references, 2 of whom you didn't give me." He slid a folder across the table. Inside it were 2 documents. The first was a lease agreement for a commercial property on Regent Street, a 5-bay garage with an attached office currently unoccupied. The terms were substantially below market rate. The second was a letter of intent for a small business loan facilitated through a company subsidiary that worked with skilled tradespeople in Northern Ontario. She looked at both of them for a long time. "You're serious," she said. "I've been looking for someone to do something useful with that property for 2 years," he said. "I'd rather it be a mechanic who knows what she's doing than another franchise operation that won't last 3 years. She looked up at him. "What do you get out of it?" "The fleet vehicles for our Sudbury operation for service quarterly," he said. 16 vehicles. We currently send them to a dealership in Hanmer because we haven't found a better local option." He paused. "I'd like a better local option." She looked back at the folder. "I'd need to have a lawyer look at these," she said. "Of course," he said. "And I'd need to change some of the maintenance terms on the lease. Send the revisions back to my office." She closed the folder. She thought about the notepad on her kitchen table where she'd been sketching floor plans and equipment lists for 2 years. She thought about the name she'd told Knox at 2 in the morning while the Road King idled clean in the bay. I have one condition, she said. He waited. I hire who I hire, she said. No interference on staffing. That was never going to be a condition, Callum said. It shouldn't have to be stated. I'm stating it anyway. He nodded once. Understood. They shook hands across the table. His grip was the same as his brother's. Unhurried, solid, the handshake of people who'd grown up somewhere that taught you to mean what you did with your hands. Okafor's Automotive opened on the second Monday of February, which was a bitter morning in Sudbury with the temperature sitting at -22 and a hard white sky pressing down on everything. Serene had been at the shop since 5:30 a.m. She'd swept the floor 3 times, which was unnecessary, and she knew it was unnecessary, and she did it again anyway. Gilles came in at 7:45. He'd left Dale's in December quietly and sent her a text 3 days later asking if she needed anyone. She'd called him back within the hour. Cody, the apprentice, had followed a week after that. She'd hired one other person, a woman named Petra who'd been doing fleet maintenance for a trucking company in Espanola and had been looking for something closer to the city. Petra arrived that first morning with a tray of coffee from Tim Hortons and set it on the counter without ceremony, and began reading the work orders Serene had already sorted for the day. The first customer arrived at 8:03, a woman with a 2015 Hyundai and a brake noise she'd been ignoring for a month. Serene took the car in herself. By noon, they had 7 vehicles in and 3 completed. Gilles was showing Cody something on a differential in Bay 4, patient and unhurried, the way that knowledge moved when it was passed by someone who actually had it. Petra was on the phone with a parts supplier in a tone that made clear she would not be paying that price, and everyone involved understood it. At 1:15, a Road King pulled into the lot. Serene came out from under the Hyundai and stood up. Knox got off the bike and pulled off his helmet and looked at the building, at the new sign above the door, white letters on black, and then at her. Okafor's, he said. Okafor's, she said. He reached into the inside of his cut and took out an envelope and held it out to her. She took it. Inside was a card, a plain no design on it, and inside the card was a handwritten note in the broad, deliberate handwriting of a man who wrote rarely but wrote carefully when he did. You fixed the bike. You kept your word about the station. I checked. Whatever comes next, you earned it. Knox, there was something else in the envelope. A folded piece of paper, which turned out to be a referral letter to the Iron Road chapter in Sudbury, signed by Knox and noting that the chapter's preferred shop for any mechanical work was, effective that date, Okafor's Automotive on Regent Street. Serene read it twice. She folded it back carefully and put it in the chest pocket of her coveralls. You want me to look at anything while you're here? She asked. Knox patted the tank of the Road King. She's running fine, he said. I just wanted to see the place. He looked at the building once more. Then he put his helmet back on, swung a leg over the bike, and pulled out onto Regent Street. She watched him go until the sound of the engine faded into the cold February air, and the street was quiet again. She went back inside. There were 3 more cars on the lot that she hadn't clocked yet. Gilles was calling her name from Bay 4. Cody had a question about the torque spec on something, and was holding a socket wrench and looking uncertain in the particular way of a young person who knows they need more information, and is not embarrassed to say so. Serene walked back through the door of her own shop, picked up her clipboard, and went to work.